Welcome to Under the Fig Tree podcast. In today's episode, hosts Reverend Micah Glenn and Reverend Dr. Ben Haupt talk theology and life as they meditate under the fig tree.
What's up? Welcome back to another episode of Under the Fig Tree podcast. I'm your host, Reverend Micah Glenn, Director of Recruitment here at Concordia Seminary, St. Louis. As always recently, joined by co-host.
Always recently, yeah.
Kati, Mrs. Kati Gaschler. How are you?
Great. I'm great.
So just two quick things. I wanted to say your full name and your middle name. Spur of the moment. Decided not to because out of respect. But I recently recorded a little 12-minute spot on Coffee Hour with Andy Bates and Sarah Golseth. And their introduction, it's like scripted.
Right.
I don't think that's a secret. I'm not trying to hate or
Is it like
crochet.
the same every time?
But it's so silky smooth.
Yeah.
And as just like a fellow podcaster, they've been doing it a lot longer than we have.
Something we should think about.
It's
maybe.
just one of those things where when you're there and you're like watching other podcasters do it live, you're like, that's all right. That is not a bad thing. There's no shade being thrown at them whatsoever.
They know what they're doing.
100%.
And we
they don't
sometimes do.
They don't have a Dale. They
No.
just do it. They don't need help. And here we are. Blessed.
Here we are.
Blessed beyond belief. Well, we're joined by a guest, Pastor Mark Renner. How are you doing today, bro?
Oh, really good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, no, nice to be here. I just realized I'm also smiling way too big. Sorry, everybody. So, Pastor Renner, can we just call you Mark for the rest of the podcast? It's
Sounds
just
good.
easier.
Yeah.
Mark is a 2020 graduate.
2021, I graduated in 2020, but part of the class of 21. Yeah.
I know how that feels. I graduated with a class I didn't start with. It just happens
Right.
sometimes, but later,
Yeah.
not early.
Right.
I was gonna say try hard, but
Wow. Okay.
but more appropriately, I'm not as ambitious. No, I studied abroad, and that
Right.
takes a year out of your life for the better, though.
Yeah. Where did you study?
At Westfield House.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So as I was saying, I'm not a try hard. I went and
Right.
studied in Cambridge. That's pretty try hard.
I studied in Cambridge.
I did study in Cambridge. I say that intentionally so everybody thinks I'm smart, because we got a really smart person on the podcast today.
Sure.
But Mark, you are a pastor at St. Mark's Lutheran Church in
Yep.
Janesville, Wisconsin.
Yep. One of the pastors up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not the same Janesville, but my brother-in-law did a vicarage in Janesville, Minnesota. Two different places,
There
but
you go.
named the same. Because whenever I say Janesville to people, they always think it's Janesville, Wisconsin. I'm like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But is Janesville, Minnesota is a very small town.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wisconsin's also a small town?
It's a small, medium-sized city. How I describe it to people is think of Canton, Ohio without the Football Hall of Fame.
Okay.
It's about 70,000 people. Canton's about 70,000 people. So,
right.
Yeah, very similar to that, demographics and everything.
When you said that, the only thing I can think about is the Hall of Fame, and I don't even know anything about Canton.
Right.
Is that where
Never
you're
been
from?
No, my mom's side of the family's from there, Canton, Massillon. I did my vicarage in Canton. And
Okay.
Yeah, you always take the pilgrimage up there to go to the Football Hall of Fame if you're from Ohio and
For sure.
and all that. So, yeah, I'm from Ohio. I'm from Marysville, Ohio. Originally, so the suburb of Columbus.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Suburb.
Well, I was also going to ask what Janesville, Wisconsin is close to.
Yeah, it's a suburb of Madison, basically.
Okay.
It's in between
Gotcha.
Rockford and Madison. It's almost in Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Now
It's a
I
cool place.
know it very well, even though I don't know it at all. But so my wife's family, they don't, I guess, currently live there now. They have a house in
Sure.
Pittsburgh, so we drive through Columbus all the time. So
Yeah.
suburb of Columbus makes a lot of sense to me.
Right.
Although I have to admit, I'm not, again, everything just is making me sound like a hater. I just should stop. Driving through Columbus can be a nightmare
Yeah, bad traffic
if
sometimes.
you're just passing through, and like if there's construction, the way things change. There have been a couple times where we've had to completely drive around
Yeah.
the city.
Mhm. Yeah, it's growing really fast.
This is
Yeah.
why I fly
Right.
everywhere. Yeah. Well, Mark, if you don't mind, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get to the big question, or you
Sure.
can or if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, and then if we don't interrupt you rudely, as we often do, tell us what led to you becoming a pastor, if you can just swoop it all into one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So married, beautiful wife, Dana. We have 3 children, Mark, Vincent, Demetrios, Andreas, called Dimitri and Andre for short.
Yep.
And Mark Vincent's with the Lord. Dimitri and Andre are with us. And my wife and the kids are over in Forest Park right now at the zoo.
Nice.
So they're having a good time
It's a
at
great
Forest
day for
Park.
it, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And growing up, I didn't really want to be a pastor. That was like the farthest thing from my mind growing up. And, just I got confirmed a little bit later because I was into sports. It was always Wednesday night. They would have confirmation. Like, I'm not going to miss football and basketball
I was
and
going to say,
track.
if
and
you
all
guys
this, so
can't tell, Mark is very tall. What are you, like 6'6"?
almost, yeah.
Okay,
Almost
yeah,
6'6", yeah. I wasn't going to miss sports and everything, so I didn't get confirmed till I was like 17, which
Sure.
I think that can actually be a good thing. A little bit older instead of like at the most rebellious time of your life being
Sure.
confirmed. And started, I guess, seedlings, think, oh man, I'll be a pastor someday, around that time being confirmed. And then did some mission work when I was like 19. And I actually grew in height while I was doing that.
Okay.
So, and, went to China and did that for a little bit. And I learned a lot more than I taught, I learned a lot more. What did I know, And that was cool. And then went to Concordia Ann Arbor and did like pre-sem stuff there. People had encouraged me in China to be a pastor, basically. So that's when it really crystallized in my mind.
What years were you at Ann Arbor?
I was there like 09 to 12.
Okay. So I left in 09. I
Oh,
transferred
okay.
out. And I think I read somewhere. I was like, I should know him maybe, but
We just missed each other.
That explains it. Okay.
Where did you transfer to, Katie?
Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
So,
Sure.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But loved both of them. So.
Yeah. Good. Right. Right.
But
Nice.
anyway.
Small
continue.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just basically then was going to go to seminary right after Ann Arbor. And then this opportunity arose through a church in Omaha, Missouri Synod Church there, Beautiful Savior, to go and work directly with the Hong Kong Lutheran Church.
Right.
So I did that for a year and then was like basically like a youth director, basically a DCE at my home church for like 2.5 years.
Sure.
Then I went to seminary. So it was kind of a winding road. But it was fun.
Yeah.
I was a little bit older. I was like really old. I was almost 28 when I went to seminary.
Really old.
I think I was 27. When I got there, so.
Right. Yeah.
As we both know, there were guys that were actually
Yeah.
really old in our classes.
Right.
Again, you guys know who you are.
Sure. So and I met my wife Dana at St. John's in Marysville. So that's basically how I became a pastor and just wanted to tell people about Jesus. And I didn't know there were all these different seminaries, or I didn't know any of that, or I didn't know there was a difference between like Missouri Synod and Wells and ELCA and all this. And
Sure.
Yeah, I just kind of had a peripheral understanding.
Blissful ignorance.
Most
right.
of my life was like that.
Yeah.
Like, we went to church often, and then it wasn't until we moved back to St. Louis and we went to a family's church that was a Lutheran church, and they had
Sure.
a woman pastor, and I remember like leaning over to my dad, I was like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Just, out of curiosity, I was like, I'd never been to a congregation with a woman pastor, and
Right.
just asking those questions. And then I grew up in St. Louis, so I just knew this was the seminary.
Yeah.
And then when I got to Concordia, Chicago, everybody was like, well, which seminary are you going to go to? I was like, what are we talking about here?
Right.
And they were like, well, you're going to go to St. Louis or Fort Wayne. I was like, what is Fort Wayne?
What is Fort Wayne?
Right.
Sometimes I still ask that question. I'm just joking.
I do too.
One day, a great friend of mine, my exact counterpart at CTS is Matt Wheatfeld. We have to have him on the podcast someday.
Yeah,
it would
we
be an
should.
absolute treat. Well, anyway.
I'm from Fort Wayne. You listen, but maybe just
Right.
so everyone knows.
Yeah.
I'm from this mystery city of what is Fort Wayne. Anyway,
Uh-huh.
go for it.
I grew up. Sorry.
No. See, this is what happens. Because now Katie is like firmly set in the podcast, and now she's finally saying stuff.
Yeah.
And so I try not to cut her off when she's like, got us, because then it's just me talking, and who wants that for an hour? Exactly.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about confirmation and just get perspective, because it is one of those things where, you know, there has been in the history of just like the program. You get to 7th grade, you go through 2 years of confirmation, depending on your program, maybe 3, you get confirmed. And then far too often, nothing after.
Right.
Anyway, I always have issues with that.
Yes.
But in my experience in recent years, including vicarage, of taking young people when they're ready and not pushing them to go through if they're feeling particularly rebellious, or making them go through it when they're uninterested, but giving them time to mature a little bit differently.
Right.
Or some want to go through earlier.
Well, this has been, our daughter will turn 9 in July. And even a few years ago, she reads her Bible. She takes it very seriously. She just, anyway, the things that this young woman says from after reading scripture always blows my mind. But there was an Ash Wednesday where we sat down, and she was like, well, the bread is Jesus's body, right? I'm like, yep. And the blood is, the wine is his blood. Yeah. And it forgives my sins, right? And gives me faith. Yeah. Why can't I have it?
Right.
And we maybe wrestled with that question for far too long, but she has a complete understanding of what the Lord's Supper is. But recently, she had her first communion on Easter Sunday. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Yeah. So now to have 2 of our kids be able to go and celebrate with the rest of the body, but in particular as parents, it's a big moment.
It is.
And so at 17, you're looking at your peers. Does that do anything to you, where you could just kind of ambivalent towards it, or how did that go?
Yeah, where I went to high school and everything, I think I was about the only Lutheran person in this little rural high school.
Yeah.
And then the church I was confirmed at, most of my family was in that area, but it was like 35 miles away from where I went to high school. And so it was like, I was kind of explaining this thing, to people at basketball or football or whatever. And it was just a lot of people who were Christians, but they were sort of like, I guess like non-denominational or Church of Christ, but they would go on holidays and they took that really seriously, or like there was a funeral, they had some level of faith in Christ, but the whole idea of going to like Ash Wednesday and going to the midweek services, that was really strange to a lot of people. So, and then everyone in this, it was a new member class. I was confirmed through a new member class. So it was like me and like older people, and so it was a different experience, but I'm glad I did it that way, because I feel like I took it more seriously. I agree with you guys. Don't rush people into it. If you're ready when you're 9, you're ready when you're 9. If you're ready when you're 15, just as long as you're excited about this and ready to learn and ready to have conversation. That's what I encountered. So I kind of felt a little bit like a duck out of water going through confirmation at that age, but in a good way. So
normally we would continue to ask questions about your upbringing and your path to ministry, that missionary experience. That's one of those things, living in China.
We can circle back around to that maybe.
And maybe I don't know, maybe there's some cases in here, because Pastor Renner is an author, a published author, and you can find this book on Amazon and probably other places.
ChristianBooks.com, Barnes & Noble, Wipf and Stock.
And so the title of the book is Curious Cases, a series of short pastoral case studies. And so I'm not going to tell everybody what it's about. I'm going to ask Pastor Renner, what's the book about?
What's the book about? I tried to make it about real life. And there are a lot of different chapters in there, 15 chapters, 10 case studies a chapter. There's a case study on dealing with racism, missions. urban and inner city ministry, rural and small town ministry, conflict resolution. A lot of stuff is covered. Caring for the poor, just a lot of chapters, missions. Yeah. So based about a third of these on direct experiences I saw exactly. And then another third are dramatizations. And, Jim Veltz would talk about drama in the scriptures.
Yeah.
Like a really basic example he would use is like the Gospel of Mark. 3 Pharisees come into the room and say XYZ to Jesus. And then 5 minutes later, 5 come in and say essentially the same thing. So instead of saying 3 came in and then 5 minutes later 5 came in, he just says a crowd of Pharisees came into the room. So is that true? Yeah, I would say it's true. And that's what I did with like another third, where this happened in Hong Kong and then something very similar to that happened at my first call. So I just combined those and maybe exaggerated certain things to get a point across. And, and then another third are situations where I didn't see this directly, but I've heard about this. I've read about this. I write one about a celebrity, and it's based off of, so Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt and Michael Jackson also said this, where they talked about wanting to, independent of one another, they talked about wanting to adopt a child from almost every country in the world.
Right.
So in the chapter on raising children, there's a celebrity that's talking about this, and I changed the name. Okay. Yeah. Please don't sue me. But, and even though that's very silly, it brings up some questions like, how would that work? Right. How could you live out your vocation as a parent to like over 100 kids or whatever? It would just be ridiculous. So, and then I wrote another one based on a famous sports stadium was built and how the workers were treated. Certain workers were buried at sea and all of this horrific stuff. And it's this beautiful stadium. I know it. You probably know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I wrote one on that, based on that. Like, what if there was a leader of the church connected to this situation? How would they react? So those are farthest from the truth, but I feel like they have a spirit of truth to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one of these things where, when you have real case studies of things that you've experienced in the church, I mean, you want to protect the people involved. And I mean, that's one of those things, even when you're, as a pastor, I'm not a faculty member, but there are students here and I have experience, and they're like, what do I do in this scenario? So what do? You draw upon your own experience of something close and related. Well, something happened when I was a pastor somewhere, and this thing happened. And if you are too specific,
you're breaking confidentiality, and you
and also, just again, depending on how you're telling it and what source of media you're using and how broad it can reach. I mean, it just could be damaging to people. And so on the one hand, you want people to use real case studies and what's the truth. But on the other hand, I think dramatizing it for the sake of getting a point across.
To make it more relatable.
Well, yeah, and it's just clever.
Applicable.
Yeah. And it makes it a little more general, I think.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So 2 things. First of all, the forward is by, I don't know, maybe someone people will recognize.
Yeah.
Some guy named Benjamin D. Haupt.
Yes. Yeah. So I had Dr. Haupt for a pastoral leadership class right before I graduated. It's like the last class I was taking. And I emailed him a case study I wrote. I believe it was on separation and divorce. And basically I tried to make it fun. I tried to make it entertaining, but yet it was stuff that I had seen or heard from acquaintances or friends in the church. And I emailed this to him, didn't use any real names, obviously. And he thought it was hilarious. He laughed and he said, "Oh, you should try to get this published." So I said, well, maybe I'll write a whole book of these because I love writing. I've been writing for years.
Okay.
I have not been published until now.
Sure.
But he said, oh, yeah, that'd be great. We actually need case studies under the new curriculum here at St. Louis, and that'd be wonderful. And so I think I would have done it anyway, but that sort of gave me the extra motivation to be like, all right, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how that came about, basically.
I'm just the idea of someone laughing over a case study about separation and divorce. I can't wait to read this then, if that's funny.
Well, it is one of these things where the situation
Yeah.
is heavy, it's serious.
Right.
But finding humor is
Well,
so important.
I mean, it's just one of these things where, like, you know, if you want to live only a serious life and there's no jokes in the world,
Yeah.
God bless you. And it'll sound like a joke. God protect you through this dark world. I mean, humor, there are times where humor is unwarranted and unwanted, but man,
Yeah.
sometimes, I mean, with trauma, once you get past it, being able to laugh at
Oh,
it
yeah.
and make light of it.
100%.
When even a few iterations of Under the Fig Tree, before we had video, Dr. Herman was on. He was talking about like Lutheran humor, talking about farting Satan away. So you're talking about something very serious and something very dangerous, and yet here's Luther, just fart in Satan's direction and tell him to be gone. Exactly. And so being able to make light of these heavy scenarios and bring humor just doesn't make, and if you do it well,
Yeah.
and you're not specific, doesn't make a joke out of the people, but
Right.
make the scenario approachable. Because again, I even when I was a student, when you start thinking about being a pastor, it's preaching and teaching the gospel, man.
Yeah.
Doing the awesome stuff.
Yes.
And then somebody's like, all right, like you have this case scenario and a spouse is cheating on another spouse, and
Right.
one's
What
an
do you do?
elder
Uh-huh.
and this person is that, and then he's
Yeah.
cheating with the church secretary,
Oh, no.
and
Oh, my
all of this
goodness.
starts to unravel, and then you're sitting there as a student, your face gets white. Like that doesn't happen in the parish, does it?
Oh, it does. And that's a big reason why I wrote those.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about,
It does.
yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just thinking about like younger seminarians, younger
Yeah.
pastors, and how do you talk about some of these serious things while laughing? Just younger leaders in the church in general, deaconesses, DCEs, but especially those training to be pastors, I think, because, you know, if you are going straight through the system, you're an adult member of a congregation long term for the first time when you become a pastor, basically.
Yep.
So the last time you were 17, just turning 18, and then, you know, when you're at Ann Arbor, maybe you go to ULC or something like that, University Lutheran Chapel.
That's where I went.
Oh, did you? Yeah, I did too. Yeah, very cool.
Yep.
And, you know, then you do field work, then you do vicarage, but you're not really a member there. And then it's like, oh, okay, you're the pastor. And some of our congregations are very healthy.
Yeah.
Some aren't. Let's just be honest about that.
Yep.
And that's just being real. And, you know, what happens if you go to a congregation that is not very healthy after having been at maybe, let's say, a very healthy church like Village Ladue or
Sure.
Concordia Kirkwood or King of Kings.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you're at Wrath of God.
Sure.
Yeah.
We just made that joke in our team meeting yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, and then I mean, I don't know, like even the reality of even in healthy congregations,
Yeah.
right? These things happen.
Yes.
And it's just none of us are infallible.
Right.
And this is especially when I'm talking to young people or guys who are considering coming into ministry, and you talk about conversations, and they talk about difficult scenarios growing up in the church and how it affected them, and then how they might react to it. It's like, well, pause for a moment, because if you become a pastor, you're not going to be able to react to it. You're going to have to respond to it.
Yes.
And how are you going to respond to it?
Right.
Because you're going to have to put what you currently feel right now aside
Right.
and be a pastor,
Yeah.
something that's bigger than yourself.
Yes.
And this is why you should come to seminary, because right now you would react, you're not ready for it. And after 4
Yeah.
years, just being honest, you'll be kind of maybe
Yeah,
a little ready for
kind of.
some of the stuff. But some of the stuff is going to be new.
Yeah.
New to your ears, new to your eyes. And the beautiful thing about coming here, when I was first a pastor and sitting in my office and confronted with this stuff, is that you're not ready for every scenario, but you're taught how to respond to scenarios as a pastor as they come your way.
Yeah.
And I imagine that maybe that this is a little bit of the heart of the book. It just run you through some scenarios just to exercise those muscles, right?
There's no answer key. It's just reflection questions at the end. I use the Harvard case study model. So
can you explain what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's just basically a presentation of people setting kind of basic situation that they're in. These are the characters, and then an opportunity or a challenge that's presented, and then some reflection questions at the end. Half a page, maybe 3 pages.
They're not very long. This is a very readable.
Yeah.
Very readable.
There's 150 in here, and the book is just over 200 pages. So that's solid.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit down for 30 minutes to get through a case study, I imagine.
Well, I want everybody to be able to enjoy these. So we live in such a Twitter or X society. We don't, sit down and read like Dickens over a fireside chat or something like that. Like people are reading like Twitter and Facebook posts and stuff, and that's just the reality of it. And I wrote this for everybody. I wrote this for the Church Catholic. So I really hope an Assembly of God person in Australia can get something out of this, and I hope a Roman Catholic in Boston can, and I hope a Missouri Synod Lutheran in Wyoming can. And the conclusions that each person comes up with, well, some will be across the board similar probably, but each person, depending on their context, might have different answers. So, yeah, I guess a few people have sort of said, well, should there be an answer key? And I'm thinking, well, if someone who's studying to be a pastor is already a pastor needs an answer key, that's probably not good.
Yeah.
They probably, and I always ask, what passages in the Bible does this remind you of? Does this remind you of a biblical character? And, you can discuss that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I had a question, and then it pretty much got answered. So now I have another question, kind of switching gears, because this is a podcast about come be a pastor, come be a deaconess, and now we're getting into these heavy things. It's heavy to be a pastor or a deaconess, to care for somebody.
Yes.
So my question is, after dealing with people's, how do I say this? Just heavy things, how do you decompress after that? How do you separate?
Right.
And any advice for future pastors and deaconesses? For
me, I go on a long walk, I exercise, I try not to bring that home. I try to be wise on what I share with my wife, Dana, and I'm sure I fall short with that, and try to get exercise. I try to laugh, try to listen to some music, maybe the Rolling Stones, maybe Kanye West, maybe Sam Cooke, and just chill out a little bit. And I realize even if someone said something that's kind of nasty or kind of hurtful, they probably don't even know that they're doing that.
Yep.
Probably. They don't know that that's what they were doing, And my congregation's really sweet. It's like Wisconsin nice instead of Minnesota nice. So I don't get that very much.
There's a difference?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like there's a different kind of nice everywhere you go.
Sure. Man.
Yeah, it's the same when people ask that question. I always encourage guys, if try to find a hobby, and that can be a lot of different things. I've taken up woodworking. I don't know if that was the best hobby to pick up. It's just expensive.
Yeah.
If you want to,
right.
If you want to do more than like take a little fiddle knife and make toothpicks. If you want to like build stuff.
Yeah.
Tools cost money, man.
Yes. Man.
I try to find them used.
So last year, about this time, we were still in Indiana, and we had a tornado go right through where we were and knocked a tree down in our yard. And Paul's hobby became clearing that entire giant tree himself. And
You get a chance. It's
I
all
mean,
right.
great for his mental health. And then he was
Nice.
sad when it was gone.
Right.
And like if you can, and that's why. Yeah, for me, it's woodworking and then the one that always is there. Well, I guess I have 3. Exercise, but that shouldn't be a hobby. That should just be some form of physical exercise. Should be a part of everybody's just life.
Right.
Doesn't have to be going to the gym, but you
Yeah.
can figure that out. And then video games,
Yeah.
in particular, Call of Duty. It doesn't require
Vice City.
time.
Old school.
See,
Go Vice City.
I
PS2.
can play Call of Duty if I have 30 minutes. I can play 2 games with friends, chit chat, go to dinner, put the kids to bed,
Right.
read a book that's not Dickens,
Yeah.
but also isn't
This one.
case studies. Yeah. Well, I'm just right now. I'm just heavy into research for graduate school, and so everything is
Yeah.
Right.
everything is the thing that I'm studying. But no, that's good. Is there? So if you had to pick some of the case studies, is it? Out of 100, there's chapters, and so instead of picking out particular case studies, I had to revise what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Walk us through the chapters, because I imagine like they're grouped by chapter, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So each chapter, I would say the ones that really are closest to me or like maybe are dearest to my heart, I would say missions, youth and young adult ministry.
Yep.
I would say urban and inner city ministry.
Just sounding more and more like a millennial. I got you.
Yeah. Dealing with racism.
Yep.
Yeah, those would be the ones, I guess. Although prison ministry, that means a lot to me as well.
Sure. Have you ever done any?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton of experience with it, but a little bit.
No,
I
I did.
visited people a few times.
I did a module in the county jail when I was a student here.
Yes,
Listen, county jail can be a scary place depending on what floor you go to.
it can be.
The guys you're in a locked room with.
Right.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But
So, yeah, I'll read the chapters real quick if you don't
Yeah,
mind. Is that
please.
okay?
Yeah.
Caring for the poor, conflict resolution, dealing with racism, death and dying, engagement in marriage, missions, pastoral counseling, prison ministry, raising children, rural and small town ministry, separation and divorce, sexual misconduct, shut-ins and homebound ministry, urban and inner city ministry, youth and young adult ministry. And I'm biased. I'm totally biased in saying this, but I don't think there's anything like this,
sure.
because all the case studies that I've been able to find, and maybe I'm just not looking well enough, it's usually a pastor in crisis or just conflict resolution. And it's like 5 or 6 or 20 really long ones.
Yeah.
But with all of these different subjects and themes, with short case studies that are digestible, I don't know of anything like this really. So, yeah, that's sort of my shameless plug on the book. Check it out.
Completely agree. And I mean, and so as we've been having this conversation, there are books like this that we read in seminary. The one that comes right to the forefront of my mind is Bo Geert's Hammer of God. Where you
Yeah.
get 3, I was gonna say short story case studies,
Yeah.
but they're not so short.
Right.
They're detailed, and this is no knock. I mean, Hammer of God, I probably read it every 2 years.
Yeah,
just
it's
because
great.
Again, all of this is generalities, right? How do you approach general situations? How do you, as a pastor, Hammer of God is a really great place to start.
Right.
And then you can take it from its context and you can read into the what's going on here. But again, it's 3, and there's a lot going on in those different stories. But man, covering 15 chapters, is remarkable in one book. And I haven't read it yet, but I did read comments. I'm pretty sure it has 5 stars on Amazon.
Sure.
So congrats. Which is difficult because, I mean, you have 15 kind of 150 case studies, 15 themes. I mean, it could go on.
Yeah.
It could go on and on and on and on. There's so many things. So to be able to do that and to be able to present them in a way that's digestible, approachable, and again, writing something that's trying to be universal to the church is a hard task.
I really tried to write these, Micah, thank you. I tried to write them in such a way to where if someone is reading these in 1924, they would get something out of it. And if someone is reading these in 2124, they'll be able to get something out of it. I didn't want it to be locked in by, time and space so much. I wanted it to be something that could be read in almost any context and you'd get something out of it. Yeah. I tried. Did my best at it. So,
well, I did have a question that it probably got answered, but I'm going to ask it more pointedly.
Sure.
Because I didn't actually ask it. So, who is this book for?
Great question. This book, most specifically, is for young pastors, young church leaders, more broadly. I guess very, very specifically, young pastors, but I think it'd be applicable to DCEs, DCMs, deaconesses, or a team of elders or a chairman of a congregation. I was
going to say, I could see a team of elders reading this just to kind of
walk your people through it,
gain some perspective on what their pastor could maybe be going through.
Right. Yeah. That's one of the things I hope to try to communicate. I have a case study in there in shut-in and homebound ministry where there's a pastor. He's single. He's visiting shut-ins. One shut-in lives in a very filthy house. She's very sick. This pastor, unbeknownst to anyone else, he has HIV. And he doesn't feel comfortable about going into this home. Oh. But who is he going to tell about this as a 26-year-old at his first call? He doesn't know he's been there about a year. He doesn't know the people super well. So, pastors are human beings too. Yep. Sometimes our minds don't perfectly connect our hearts, and our hearts don't perfectly connect our souls, and our souls don't perfectly connect our body, and just so on and so forth. And we have concerns that maybe are very private. Maybe we don't know who to confide in. Maybe the one person or two people that we can confide in are people that aren't even in our denomination, or maybe aren't even pastors. Mm-hmm. So, it's for young pastors, and they could be older people with not a lot of experience, or it could be someone training to be a pastor, or it could be someone in Stephen ministry, but most specifically for pastors, I would say. Yeah. And I think they make good icebreakers too. Like we have circuits where you'll have a guy, he thought for sure he was going to be doing like campus ministry in Southern California. And now he's in Kansas at a church, and they're like, I love Kansas, right? But they're like, well, we used to do college ministry here, but we don't anymore. We're hoping you'd start that up. So he's there. Then you've got a guy that's like, he's 77. God bless him. He's awesome. He's a part of the last class at the Springfield Seminary, super old school, kind of a cowboy, great guy. And then you've got someone who, went to St. Louis. They don't even do traditional worship. They only wear shorts in the service. And then you've got a guy, he's like, I went to Fort Wayne. I'm really hoping to get the service in Latin in a couple of years. My people aren't quite ready yet, but I'm working really hard at that.
Good and for him.
This is and that's the circuit.
The caricatures are so good.
So they don't know, I don't want to bring up that my elder had a fight with the organist, and the organist is yelling at this person, because we're all private, but these can make good icebreakers. And people can kind of laugh, and then they're like, that reminds me, Schnickelfritz really got into it with Charlie the other day, or whatever. So,
I love that. Those are great, great characters.
Well, and like the timing of it, it's just one of those things where Ben is right, and he would be, because he teaches a class on pastoral leadership, and it's one of these things where, so again, Hammer of God, great stuff. But I that whole pastoral theology book, it's good, but it is, there's good to be taken out of it, but some of it's dated.
Right.
And sometimes you read it, and like some of the case studies just don't cross over.
They don't.
And then it's like, well, how do you make sense of that? So it's one of these things where we have a great history of these types of things, but making sure we're up to speed. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just, again, it's one of these, well, they're short and everybody's like, well, you're feeding into the TikTok brain. Well, that's the scenario we're in. So do you want them to engage with it or
Right.
and
Also,
interact with it or not?
Pastors are busy.
100%.
This is so readable.
Yeah, you don't have to commit, and that was my point with video games.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Yes.
commit. You can just stop, read a case study,
Right.
think through it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's since you ask questions about, does this remind you anything about scripture and things like that? What biblical text you can use it devotionally? It just can be used. It feels like, again, it can be used a couple ways, and maybe you had that in mind when you were putting it together.
Yeah, devotional, shared at a conference, in a very academic setting. But then I've also had some pretty positive feedback for people who are in no way, shape, or form affiliated with church work, because they're like, wow, this actually brings up some interesting ethical questions. And I'm like, really, you're not turned off or weirded out by like the question about what passages in the Bible does this remind you of, or what do you think Jesus would say in this situation specifically? And they're like, not really. And he's like, that's the only, I'm okay with it. I find this very interesting, Mark. One friend, he's a college professor and he's not in church work or anything. So yeah, I think pastors are busy. I think it's a good icebreaker. I think it's a great conversation starter. What I've seen so far as groups are going through this book, you'll have 2 or 3 people that are totally on board with one case study, and they had no idea they would be. And then the next case study, they are just opposites on what they think should or shouldn't happen. And there's one case study in here. I believe the pastor's name is Donald Newhouse, and I based this pastor off of Richard Newhouse, who's an alumnus of St. Louis, and he founded National Review. He founded Catholics and Protestants Together, and he was amazing. My favorite alumnus of Concordia Seminary. And it's entitled, Is Pastor Liberal or Is He Conservative? Because the scriptural passages he's using to justify universal health care, he's also using those to stand for the unborn. And as pastors or church workers, it's like, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? Or you mentioned that your grandparents voted for FDR and you said you liked FDR. What's that all about? And it's like, yeah, it's cool. That's cool. They both have good points.
Right.
There are good points with the Republicans and the Democrats. I'm just trying to be faithful to God's word. I'm not so much thinking of it through a political lens, but yet sometimes people think, what party are you a part of or whatever? So,
which is a thing, and it becomes more and more of a thing. And when I was talking about it being timely, not only just because, I think it's just been recognized. So now even through CPH, more and more pastoral leaderships are now being published. Because it's like, hey, we there's a gap, and so recognizing that they've begun to push that way. But as we settle, on the one hand, we never want to talk about COVID-19 ever again.
Right.
But the reality is that now, whether you want to admit it or not, we're starting to have to really reconcile with what did it mean, and not just what did it mean for there to be a global pandemic in the world, but what does it now mean in the aftermath of all the things that happened along with it.
Yes.
To where, again, there was a housing bubble and everybody was like, well, the economy would resettle.
Yeah.
Still waiting for that to happen.
Right.
And then, my youngest is 7.5. And so he was 3, a little over 3 at the beginning of the pandemic. So for a significant portion of his life, people were wearing masks in public. And when we went on vacation and we were on a plane in 2021 or 22, I can't really remember. It's like, don't pull your face mask down because there's videos of people being kicked off planes because their 4-year-old son won't keep his face mask on. And so it's just this, we're coming out of that. And again, so what does all that mean? Going through it, I don't know what exactly all the case studies are. But just that mind, it feels, again, just reflecting on hearing you talk about it, just stop and think about it before you say or do things. And that's just such a difficult thing because, again, we got into this weird, this is pre-pandemic where we've just gotten into hitting send a little too quickly.
Yeah.
In all scenarios.
Right.
And that is unfortunate. And like I said, even with the other thing, reacting versus responding, the damage that it can cause, you don't truly know.
Yeah.
What damage can be done from unintentionally saying the wrong thing.
Right. Saying something you'd say in the virtual world that you'd never say to someone's face
right.
in person. But you're like, oh, well, this is okay. This isn't totally real. So I'll send this email. Yeah.
And hopefully things like this humanize those situations where we're not hitting send at all, because it's a real person. You're not going to say something like that to somebody.
Yeah.
I fully support that. I made a policy a long time ago, and I don't have to do it anymore, where I would type things.
Yeah.
And I would send them to my wife.
Right.
Like
Very wise.
I want to send this, but I just shouldn't send it. And then I got into the practice of just typing it to myself in a blank document and deleting it. Just get it out of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then it's just like, it's social media.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Yeah.
And there's a deep part of me that hopes that we now see how conversations just don't belong there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes.
I'm excited to read it. I have like a small background in psychology, so this really piques my interest.
I think you'll like it.
I think I will too. No, I really am excited. When he told me that we were going to have you on and he told me about the book, I was like, that is something I would read. 100%. So yeah, I'm excited to read it.
Good. Great.
Did you have a background in psychology?
Oh, I took some courses in undergrad, but I didn't minor in it or major. I almost could have minored in it. I think I took like 7 psychology courses in undergrad, something like that. So, but I didn't minor in it. I was just so focused on getting through undergrad and then going to seminary. And, but and my mom and sister are in psychology, so I picked their brains on things. But I'm not a psychologist, so.
Well, as a future deaconess student myself, I'm looking forward to seeing how this could kind of help a little bit with those practical things.
Right. And not every scenario would fit neatly into a confessional Lutheran box, but some very much do. A lot do, I think. A number do. But that's also a good thing. We can empathize with other Christians or with non-Christians a little bit better by reading this, I think, and better understand where they're headed. And I think sometimes when we're in seminary or training to be a deaconess or training to be a pastor or DC, it's like, well, you'll go and there will be this incredible support group of, people in your winkle or in your circuit that are of your denomination. Not always. Yeah. There might be one dude, he's totally burnt out. He's, and he'll tell you he is. And it's like people of different denominations are the most supportive people in that setting. So, it makes sometimes ministry makes these incredibly beautiful, strange friendships and partnerships. Yeah.
100%. As you think about like the process of writing it, because you wrote it post-seminary.
Yeah, very end of seminary, like literally the last semester, end of the last semester, yeah.
And as you think about the time you've served as a pastor, was the process of writing, did you find that beneficial? Do you find it beneficial? And then as you continue to serve, do you still reflect upon it? And then do you think about what's next and things of that nature?
Oh, absolutely. This was super therapeutic for me to write. And I just got so much off of my chest and out of my mind and out of my heart for a second writing these down. And certain things are still in the back of my head, but they're a little bit too raw to put down on paper yet. So, and I base so many things off of my time as like a missionary or going through undergrad and doing kind of field work type stuff or being at the Lutheran Church in Hong Kong or whatever it was. And yeah, I'm about a quarter through writing the next book, and I've got different chapters. There will be a chapter in there about artificial intelligence.
Sure.
So
Is it going to be like volume 2?
kind of. I've got a different name for it. So the wording will be slightly different, but yeah, it'll sort of be like volume 2, and I think it'll have more chapters, but maybe not as many case studies in each chapter. So yeah, I've written quite a few, and I love to write and use my imagination, and yeah, each one's sort of like an episode, almost like, Law and Order, Seinfeld, Unsolved Mysteries, that's kind of what it's like. So there's not always a clear ending to these, but sometimes. Yeah. So.
Are your parishioners, do they make jokes about how they're just going to end up in your next book now?
A few have, but I can't believe but I can't believe how supportive they've been. They've really dug it. And I thought, oh boy, there are a few in here, like in the sexual misconduct chapter. And I don't know that I would categorize this as R-rated, but I would say it's PG-13.
Yeah.
This is probably college age and higher.
Yeah.
I think high school students could do it with a little bit of parental or educational supervision. I think they'd be fine. But yeah, there are some in there that are, and here's the secret. The craziest ones in here are the ones that are closest to the actual truth and happening, I think. So
sometimes it's already too crazy to make something else up. It's one of these things where, again, I don't like to, again, make light of real life scenarios.
Right.
But again, it's somebody's asking questions, and like whenever I'm preventing in front of high schoolers, they're like, are you encounter crazy things as a pastor? It's like, like legitimately, sometimes things you would never believe.
Right.
Like, and I could tell you, and then after I told you with detail, you'd be like, there's no way that's real.
No.
This is legitimately real life.
Yeah. I almost didn't. There were several. I was like, I don't know if I should write this down. It's just too unbelievable. But I'm like, that's what happened. Right. I won't use the real names. I won't use real places. But I'm sure there are a few in here where like, that would not happen. It's like, that did. So I love hearing feedback about this and, hearing what people think.
One, and kind of reflecting upon what Katie said, like, parishioners, am I going to end up in a book, and then being supportive of it? I mean, when I hear that, and here's the benefit of doing it in my mind of doing something like this, is that when you approach these wild and crazy, feel like fictional stories that happen in real life, if you approach them well,
right,
and especially if you approach them pastorally, on the other side, is what's on the other side of all of our sin is baptismal regeneration, forgiveness, new creation, and another day of Jesus hitting our reset button for us and giving us another opportunity, right? And so if that's happened, even in the wild and crazy scenario, if you've learned and you've done it well, the other person will be able to say, you know what, we got through this, Pastor. If my story can help somebody else, please share. And it's such a remarkable thing. And that's just the beautiful thing about, one of the many beautiful things about being the church is just this reality that when we drop the false pretenses, and just take it for what it is, what we can then actually share, not ourselves,
Jesus,
but what Jesus is doing through us, and often in spite of us. Again, just hearing you talk about the book and briefly what I read online and on the back cover, I'm feeling stronger and stronger that this is kind of what the book is about. Yeah.
My thought is with this book also, Christians, we're just people. Yep. There's not some magical quality about Christians. Well, there's something supernatural in that we've been baptized.
Right.
All of the problems, all of the issues that are taking place in our society, we are either directly or indirectly just about dealing with. That everyone else is. We're influenced by society. I am. We all are. And we have security, to add to what you said so beautifully, we have security in our baptism to discuss difficult things. We don't need to be scared of the world or what's out there. You know, we should be engaging the world, having conversations with people in this beautiful, good, crazy, mixed up world that we live in. So if I had $100 billion dream with this book, and I'm not saying it will be this, but it would be, and it's so far-fetched, I hesitate to even say it, but it would bridge the gap of the world of the church and the secular world, that we would better understand one another through this. I meet people all the time, just a little bit, probably a little younger than me, and I'm like, wow, so you've never been to church before. Mm-hmm. Or they're like, one time they went to a Catholic wedding, or they went to VBS once.
Right.
And I'll tell friends this, maybe people that are more Gen X or Boomer, and they're like, yeah, but their parents did. And they'll come back, no, their parents didn't. Mm-hmm. Their parents were born in the late 70s, early 80s. They did not. No, in many cases. Their grandparents did.
Right.
And their parents would go like twice a year to church, but no, they didn't grow up in the church. Their parents didn't even. So yeah, that's the real world that we're encountering, and trying to responsibly share this beautiful message of grace. And I guess what I would also say, to more specifically talk about the Missouri Synod, my hope a little bit would be that we would become something, possibly with the help of this book, and just kind of Christians in general, something closer to an urban church than what we are now.
Sure.
Like the LCMS, we're primarily a suburban, but really a rural church body primarily. Mm-hmm. And the early church, early Christianity was very much an urban movement. Thessalonica, Athens, Rome, Corinth, Ephesus, these are huge cities even by today's standards. Right. Most of them are port cities. And this is where people are. And this is where people are interacting. And it's so funny that they had all of this beautiful artwork in the early church. Where do artists live? Mm-hmm. Just like today. They're on the fringes of society often, commenting on what's taking place in our culture. So, and then not to rip on rural areas, I was born in a county with 30,000 people, very rural. The biggest town had like 10,000 people. But the word... I might get in some trouble for this, paganus or paganus, it just means country person or rustic person, rural person. That's all it means. Christianity was very much so an urban, multicultural movement. And it just seems so strange to me that we have the most beautiful teaching, I think, in the entire church on earth.
Amen.
I really believe that as Missouri Synod Lutherans in general, but I'd say very much as LCMS Lutherans. I know some people disagree with me on that, but yet so often it's like, you know, it's out in the countryside, way out, and it should be out there.
100%. Yeah.
But yet so many people in large cities where there are people coming and going, they never get to encounter it because they don't have a car, or they don't live in the country or whatever. So yeah, that would be my hope, that maybe this would light a little bit of a fire in people to go more to the cities, at least the suburbs.
Sure. No, I mean, and it's urban ministry is just tough.
Yeah.
Right. It is very difficult.
But it's fun too. And there's a lot to do in the city, a lot of benefits, a lot of amenities that you don't get in the country.
No,
yeah,
I'm very much a...
Well, I never thought that my husband and I would end up in an urban setting, and here we are, and we love it. Yes. There are so many amazing things. We have so many different types of people in our church, and we are such a cohesive community, and it's so neat to see everyone just enjoying everybody for everything that we have, you know, in common, and everything that makes us different too. So it's really neat to be around people that are come from all over. And, you know, our church, it's in a way, Paul just described it like this. It's a suburban church in that people come from outside of the general community to come to our church, but we're also gaining more neighborhood people, which is really awesome.
Oh, that's great.
That a church should serve its neighborhood, and so that's what we're trying to. So
right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And love is different. Love is not the same. So when we meet people with the gospel that are different than us, isn't that so beautiful?
Yeah.
Isn't that so wonderful? Then they meet us with the gospel, and we learn from each other's differences. And yeah, it's a lot more fun than just only talking or interacting with people that are exactly like us, look exactly like us, and think exactly like us, and we grow that way. Yeah. So this is what the church should be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great stuff. There was a question I had in the midst of that, but it is a long-winded one, so I won't ask it. It's all right. We're at that kind of time.
Yeah.
Where well, at some point we have to begin to wrap things up.
Sure.
That's not quite the time.
People's attentions are fading as they're watching this.
That's all
They're
right.
like, come on. I just want to get to the book. I ordered it on Amazon. It's getting here in an hour. Just let me read it. Anyway.
Yeah. But
it's like $10 on Kindle. I think that's pretty affordable. I feel really good about that.
Yeah.
That just about any church on earth could probably order it on Kindle. And it's available in paperback and hardback on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, ChristianBooks.com, WipfandStock.com. Yeah.
As you were talking about your $1 billion ambition, it's just the way my mind thinks these days. Imagine it like somebody like animated them into YouTube shorts or something like that.
Yeah.
If you're listening, you're ambitious, you have a class project.
That would be great.
It would be
amazing.
really cool, right? I was just
like that
thinking
idea.
about that because you were talking about like it being episodes and shows.
Yes.
It's like, well, I find myself watching YouTube more than I do Netflix, and we got rid of most of those things. Anyway, different. I just wanted to throw that out there just because as you were talking about, I was like, man, because it's just different ways of communicating with people. There's audio for the people who just listen to us on iTunes or whatever, but we started doing YouTube because the set is nice. I don't know.
Our viewership is about split between listening and watching, which is wild. Like
cool.
I never watch YouTube.
No,
Ever.
well, yeah, well, right. And I listen to a lot of podcasts, but one day, like on my feed, like podcasts started showing up on YouTube. I'm like, why is this a thing?
Yeah,
because they're doing exactly what we're doing. It's like, how is this on YouTube? But then you look at the listeners. It's just this is where people are,
right?
And so putting yourself in a place so that you can be heard, especially if you have a strong message, is just so critical. All right. Let's not get lost again talking about just life and your book and ministry, because that happens. Tangents. Thank you for coming on. We're not wrapping up, but I just wanted to say that because we're going to transition to perhaps the best part, most relevant, most important part of the podcast. It is called Right for the Picking or Leave It on the Tree.
Sure.
Where Katie and I will throw some very subjective topics out to you.
Yeah.
If you like it, it's right for the picking. Katie is feverishly writing right now.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, leave it on the tree. Feel free to justify yourself. I feel like when Ben would do this, he would do things like cats. So I would never in a million years dream.
Someday.
But how do you? No, I'm just messing.
Someday I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna say cats.
Yeah, listen, okay. Anyway, it was his. I was like, man, why would you say that? Because I don't feel particularly strongly about cats, but I do feel particularly strongly about the first one. There's no shame in it now.
Yeah.
And it's become the first one now for many episodes. And so I'll just begin. Right for the pick and leave it on the tree. Pineapple on pizza.
Leave it on the tree. I'm not crazy about it.
There we go. It's just, see, this is.
It's my favorite pizza.
I know that about you. This is why I ask it, and this is why I continue to ask it, because if you think about like all of the lasting movements in the world, it started with precision, with clarity, and a grassroots level.
Yeah. And
slowly but surely, one episode at a time, I will remove pineapple on pizza from the world. It'll just end with this podcast. That's the goal.
And
That's my $1 billion ambition with
There
that
you
question.
go.
And I will single-handedly keep it in this
We'll
world.
see. We'll see.
Just to be obstinate.
Not if it's not available. I guess
Whatever.
you could do it at home. Anyway.
Okay, so I wrote some down because since you live in Wisconsin, I have some Wisconsin-themed
Oh, boy.
ones. So ripe for the pickin' or leave it on the tree, Wisconsin Dells.
Ripe for the picking. It's cool. Yeah, it sort of looks like a place in Ohio called Hocking Hills.
Okay.
Except you have more amusement parks and more lakes and stuff like that. Hocking
Yeah.
Hills doesn't really have an amusement park. So, yeah. It's sort of like Hocking Hills meets Sandusky.
Oh,
So,
Sure.
yeah, it's cool.
Have you been to Wisconsin Dells?
I have not.
Do you know what it is?
I know what it is because I hang out with a lot of Lutherans from Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in fact, I can't remember. I feel like when I was at Concordia Chicago in a class, we had like a youth ministry project where we had to like plan a youth trip. And part of the trip, me and my classmate talked about, they put in the Wisconsin Dells as a place to stop. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
sure.
100%.
That being said, because I've never been, I'll leave it on the tree. I like that. The idea sounds cool.
Yeah.
But if I'm gonna just be 100% honest. If I'm gonna take a vacation and go somewhere, it's not gonna be
Wisconsin.
Dells. Yeah, I'm just being real with everybody.
For people that don't know, Wisconsin Dells it just has a bunch of water parks and some other
Yeah.
things.
Boat
but mostly,
rides,
yeah.
nice nature. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
area. Yeah.
So it's right for the picking for me.
There you go.
So
Bang bang.
Yeah.
I haven't asked this one in a while, and this might be my last attempt at asking it. We'll see. Right for the picking or leave it on the tree. The new Star Trek movies.
Oh boy. Leave it on the tree just because I've only seen, I think, one of those.
Okay.
So if you were to ask me about Star Wars, I would have a more informed opinion that for sure.
But that's almost universal unless you're crazy.
Yes.
Okay.
the ones with Chris Pine,
Those are the ones. Those are the new ones.
right for the picking.
Yeah.
So they're the only Star Trek things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So it is right for the picking for me as well. I feel like if I were to go back and watch the old Star Trek movies, actually not too long ago, I watched the Wrath of Khan. I was like, oh, this is actually pretty solid. But
Yeah.
growing up as a kid, I'm just gonna be honest. Like of all the space things in the world, Star Trek was just a little too nerdy for me. But the new Star Trek one, Dorothy's a big Star Trek fan. And I like to make fun of her for it, but
I was sitting in a class and she was like a few rows behind me, and Dr. Aaron asked a Star Trek question, and she's the only one that shouted out the answer. It was so unexpected.
Listen, she can tell you. I bet she said it very excitedly as well.
Yeah, and then you could see her just kind of like laugh about it. It was the funniest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, my turn.
I don't know. I always ask that because I should ask her someday how she feels about him. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, this is kind of a Wisconsin thing, and maybe it's more of a Milwaukee thing. So that's
Sure.
okay. Right for the picking or leave it on the tree. Bloody Marys.
Oh, leave it on the tree. I'm not a fan. Tomato juice, that just seems so weird to me.
Yeah.
And I know people get those at brunch, and I'm not judging. That's just not my
Sorry,
thing.
you can judge here.
I would be more likely to, not that I really drink these, but like a screwdriver or something like that
Sure.
than I would a Bloody Mary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair.
It's a hard leave it on the tree for me. They listen because not only time
Yeah.
of day,
Yeah.
but it's tomato juice is gross.
Yeah,
It is vile.
it's like cold soup with vodka in it.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, Paul really likes them, and I
Okay.
always take a sip, and more I'm like, that's not bad. I love making them, putting all the garnishes in them. But well, it's a Wisconsin thing because someone should Google like Wisconsin Bloody Mary. It's insane. It's like
Okay.
Yeah.
full chickens coming out of them, full fried chicken.
If I'm gonna drink and brunch, yeah, it'll be like a screwdriver or like a mimosa or something
Yeah.
like that. Make the jokes if you want to, but Bloody Marys are disgusting. That's a hard pass for me. All right.
Yeah.
All right, last one for me. Right for the picking or leave it on the tree. Vibram shoes.
Vibram shoes.
Those are like the.
Oh, specifically the 5-finger Vibrams.
Well, that's what. Isn't that all? Isn't that
I
the
don't
brand?
think so.
Well,
I would say ripe for the picking just because they look so cool. They're sort of like, don't like frogmen or something wear those sometimes? Like they go, I don't know.
possibly.
Yeah, but I've never worn them, but they do look really pretty cool. So
Okay, so the 5-finger ones, no, leave it
What?
on the tree. But
This is like your whole thing.
You know how I feel about barefoot style shoes.
Right.
So barefoot style shoes, right for the picking. That's all I wear.
But aren't Vibram shoes barefoot style shoes?
They are, but I don't think they're all 5 toe or whatever. I don't think they're all that.
So
You can get other shoes with a Vibram sole. Trust me, I've looked into it. They don't have to have the toes.
But you like them with the toes.
Well, I like toe socks, actually. Not the shoes though.
All
That's a little much.
All right, well, they're leaving on the tree for me. It's not even about fashion. I don't know. It's just they're goofy. I don't
I'll
know.
wear them
Right.
someday.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. We'll stay with the Wisconsin theme. Why not? Ripe for the picking or leave it on the tree. Cheese curds.
Oh, ripe for the picking. I love cheese curds. That's one of the best things about Wisconsin.
Like
Oh
deep
my
fried
gosh.
or just not deep fried, or either way.
Deep fried.
Yeah.
Yeah, or baked. Yeah, deep fried, I
Interesting.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're delicious. Oh my gosh. I didn't know much about these until I went up there. Oh, yeah. And they're pretty addictive.
It is a thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cheese curds are right for the picking. It's interesting you said deep fried or baked because I feel like real Wisconsin people would like they have to be like room temperature and like squeak in your teeth.
Yeah, they got squeak.
Yeah, that's like the real way, right?
Yeah, either way.
But as you said, deep fried, that actually sounds really good.
Yeah.
Deep fried food is just health aside, it's
Yeah.
delicious.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So, well, that's it.
Cool.
It's all the Wisconsin
Great.
things I know.
Well, Mark, we appreciate you coming on and making space in your schedule. We never even said it, but you're here during the multi-ethnic symposia. So,
Yeah.
So thanks for
Thanks for having me.
No,
yeah.
for sure.
That was
Absolutely.
amazing.
Thanks for bringing the book. Thanks for taking the time. Before we sign off, we always like to ask our guests if there was one piece of advice you had for anybody thinking about a career in church work, what would that one piece of advice be?
That one piece of advice would be being a church worker is such a fantastic blessing. Completely, if you want to do this, do it. If you feel like God wants you to do it, do it. Totally rely on the Lord and lean hard. Really rely also on the people that God's put in your life, your family and your close friends, and just take it one day at a time. That'd be my advice.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us. And thank you for tuning in and listening, whether that's on the podcasting app that you use or watching on YouTube. Again, check out Curious Cases, a series of short pastoral case studies by Pastor Mark Renner, forward by Reverend Dr. Benjamin Haupt, yours truly, who once upon a time used to frequent this podcast. But yeah, check it out. It's available on different websites and different formats. Again, I will likely start reading through some of the case studies here this afternoon. It's a very interesting topic and again, very timely. But again, thanks for tuning in. If you're watching and, you've thought to yourself, maybe this is something I want to do, as always, don't think. Fill out a request for information. The link is in the description of the YouTube video, or you can find it at www.csl.edu on the admissions page. Fill that out so we can reach out and have a conversation with you. It's commitment and cost-free. And you never know. You might enjoy the conversation so much that you come and visit us and let us do our job and convince you to become a student. But if you know yourself that church work isn't for you, but you've always looked at the other person in the pew or in Bible study and thought to yourself, man, they would be a great pastor, deaconess, teacher, DC, or the like, don't think too long. Make sure you tell them, because you could be that person that gives them that encouragement that gets them to take the next step and pursue a life of church work in service to God and his people. There's nothing great in the world that anybody can do. It's just a wonderful thing. And then who knows, maybe you'll have a case study that ends up published in a book someday. You never know. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time under the fig tree. Take care.